how's it going, everyone? This is Jamie Medina with the Darkpod 24. I wasn't going to get into the whole, veteran thing that's been going on lately. Now, if you occupy the space or if you watch a veterans-related podcast, you'd hear a lot of things right now going on about Tim Kennedy. Now, Tim Kennedy, awesome dude, man. I've never met Tim Kennedy. I don't know Tim Kennedy. I do know a couple of guys that kind of roll in the same circles as him. With the Black Rifle Coffee Company guys. I know a couple of those guys. One of them was in my unit, and I actually deployed with them many years ago. So a couple of my buddies were asking me, dude, you should weigh in on this. You rolled in the same circles. You deployed with SF and all that good stuff. And yeah, so myself, I was an Air Force JTAC. I worked unconventional and I worked conventional missions. And I have worked with Green Berets. I worked with Marines, Army. Gosh, they farm us out to everybody. We were kind of the war whores back in the day as far as, the war on terror. Why? Because we bring airstrikes, man. We call it airstrikes. Whenever any type of infantry or ground pounders were in the thick of it, we'd be there alongside with them, but only our capability is to call in close air support. And then, typically the fight's over after that. Okay, so back to Tim Kennedy. A couple of my buddies, especially my buddy James Ellis. What's up, man? I got to give you a little shout out. He's always hitting me up. Medina, you got to get on this, man. Give your 2 cents. Well, so the Anti-Hero podcast went through Tim Kennedy's book. This was about a 6-month research about 6 months, I believe I heard on their podcast. I sort of just kind of fast forwarded through it to get the meat of it. But they researched his book, and they kind of went line by line, chapter by chapter, taking out his stories, which they say are embellished or just flat out lies. They say he lied about a service, stolen valor, some Purple Hearts that apparently he said he should have gotten but didn't get, apparently. I don't know, it's just a bunch of stuff, man, a bunch of drama. And then after that, Tim Kennedy puts out a reply or rebuttal to it, right? He comes out saying it's all fabricated, taken out of context, all that good stuff. Which I think they both may be right in a sense, right? So if you think about who Tim Kennedy is, right? He's a Green Beret, right? Army Ranger. Sniper. He was a UFC fighter, a pretty good UFC fighter from what I understand. But, he rolls in that circle that I told you about, right? Like the Black Rifle Coffee Company guys who put out videos, hilarious, very dark, extreme dark humor videos where, they make fun of shit. They make fun of all kinds of things. That's the thing about the dark humor military world. Not for everybody, right? A lot of satire. A lot of times they're acting, right? They're embellishing. That's sort of their gig. That's their jam, man. And so when I read his book, right, and I read a couple lines. I looked into it a little bit and read some of the chapters in his book, and I thought to myself, no freaking way did this happen. But then again, it could have happened, right? Because I've got some stories that would just blow your freaking mind, man. Like, I don't even tell many war stories, because it sounds like I'm lying. Like, when I do write about it sometimes, I talk about it sometimes, but it sounds like I am absolutely lying my ass off because there's no way in reality, these things that I could probably tell you I've been a part of or been in have happened, right? But they did. But the thing is, whenever you tell a war story, the more you tell them, they seem to get bigger and bigger, right? Sometimes. I'm sure even I'm probably guilty of that as well. However, I don't tell any war stories that aren't backed up by narratives and medals that I got or synopsises of battle damage assessments. Like everything that I've ever said or any war story that I ever told is it's in black and white, man. It really is not too hard to find. But anyway, I digress. Back to Tim Kennedy. Right? Like I said, he's a character, man. He's a personality. He's a larger than life personality. He is a veteran, and he's kind of like a professional veteran, right? He just constantly touts his military service, and which gets him gigs on Fox News, man. He's been in a couple movies. The History Channel has done things about him. I mean, the dude's a character, right? Like I said, he's a big personality. He's a character, and he plays into that, right? And just keeps feeding itself, right? So you can look at his book and say, oh, it's bullshit. Well, maybe not. These guys say they can prove it. They're going to have a couple people, I guess, from his team come out and refute some of the things that he said. And, okay, say they do that. Say the majority of his book is embellishment and or complete total horseshit. Do I blame the guy for that? Fuck no, I don't. You know what I mean? Stolen valor? I don't think so. Because he says that he said a lot of things that the Anti-Hero podcast did was they took a lot of things out of context. But what context is there if you're a guy who bases everything that you do on dark humor, right? Satire, being sarcastic, cynical. Like, he's a cartoon, man. Like I said, he's a personality. And it's all performative, right? It's all performative. From his stories, from the videos they make on YouTube, like I said, the Black Rifle Coffee Crew. Dude, these guys are freaking hilarious. And they made that movie, what was it, Range 15, a zombie apocalypse. I believe Tim Kennedy was in that too. I don't know, man. I mean, these dudes are funny. They're funny. And And I would say if you see anything that he's on, you go, I take it all with a grain of salt. I mean, honestly, I take everything with a grain of salt that anybody says, right? Like I said, you could probably say the same thing about me, man. A lot of times when you get excited, you're telling the stories, and maybe the bomb was a little bigger than what it was, or whatever, dude. Hey, man, he was there. He's been there. He's done that. He's got a T-shirt. Like I said, his resume is freaking ridiculous. I think I just saw him on Fox News like a week ago in Israel, right? Like giving a brief to them about how it was on the ground. This dude, he's always into something, man. Is it for self-gain? Fuck yeah, it is. Of course it's for self-gain. So some of these guys, like the Anti-Hero podcast and a couple other people that are in that kind of crew of holding veterans accountable, that's why they say they're doing it, right? It's not jealousy, it's not envy, it's not the fact that Tim Kennedy's a multimillionaire now because of his stories and because of his UFC career and the career that he's made for himself being the character of Tim Kennedy. Like he plays himself in every interview or podcast or whatever. I don't hate the guy, dude. I don't. How could you hate the guy? Would I hang around with him? I don't know, maybe to be entertained or, go out and have some beers with him or something. I mean, I would. I'd probably hang out with him. I bet he's a pretty funny dude. Now, the things he says about some of the missions and stuff that he went on and the things that he did, like operationally, would I want him on my team? Fuck no. Nah, dude, I wouldn't want him on my team. I mean, someone just run around. But like I said, it's a total embellishment, dude. I believe a lot of things that he says, he embellishes, right? But, I've known so many guys like that, man. Actually, he reminds me of somebody that was in one of my old teams or my unit back in the day. It reminds me of him to the letter, man. He always told the biggest whoppers of stories, and he was always in it, and he only had like one deployment, you know what I mean? Not to knock anybody's service, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah. He just makes me laugh, dude. Like I said, the guy's he's a character, man. He's a cartoon. But these guys went after him. You know what I mean? They did 6 months of research, right? Went line by line on the book, trying to find out what the heck, was right or wrong. But they went into it, right? If you think about it, what's the podcast called? The Anti-Hero Podcast, right? They're going after people who either say they're heroes or were presented as heroes or, whatever it may be, man. A lot of people are saying, oh, these guys are jealous. Maybe. Who's to say? Tim Kennedy's full of shit? Maybe. Who's to say? Other than the people that have actually served with him or have been on teams with him, they would know. And apparently they're going to come out and say some things. But okay, so you outed him. What's the end result here, right? What's the end state? Well, we prove that he's a liar or not, right? Or we prove that he embellishes or not. Is it really going to hurt him? I don't know. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. Maybe everybody's going to forget about this in about 10 minutes. Who knows? With the way everything is, with social media and the attention span of, the American people. But like I said, man, most of you probably haven't even heard about this. It's only going down like in the veteran community and the veteran circle of, podcasts and trying to hold other veterans accountable, which really going to hold veterans accountable. That's why you're doing it. That's why he spent 6 months, trying to go line by line in his book to hold him accountable. Dude, he strikes me as a person that he doesn't give a shit. Like, he could probably be telling a story that's absolutely fake, or maybe it's somebody else's story, and he probably wouldn't even give a shit. He just says it and moves on. That dude, if you watch him on podcasts or anything, dude, you're like, this dude's got like ADD to the nth degree, and he just keeps going. But, hey, man, he's entertaining. Like I said, he's a character. He's a caricature of himself, right? Another reason they say they do that is because they don't want new guys who are coming into the military or new guys who may be Green Berets or the up-and-comers to read what he wrote in his book and think, I should probably operate like Tim Kennedy and throw tins of grenades through windows and carry backpacks full of grenades and all this crazy shit, It just makes me laugh, dude, that he said that he did. I think that's kind of a I don't know, a nuance, but that's kind of a bullshit reason, dude. Like, I don't want the new guys coming in here reading what he wrote. Number one, I don't know any veteran that read his book other than the guy, because it's been out for 2 years now, man. His book has been out for 2 years. And these guys took 6 months to come up with, outing him as being full of shit or whatever. I don't think it's going to hurt him, dude. I really don't. I think it's going to be all for nothing. Like I said, I don't know Tim Kennedy. I haven't met Tim Kennedy. He seems like he's a pretty funny dude, man. He's probably a bit of a wise ass dipshit, dark humor guy, like the majority of us are, right? But I look at his book, like I said, and I take it with a grain of salt. I don't think these anti-hero podcast guys or the Green Beret or any of these other freaking podcast guys that are holding veterans accountable, which I don't think any one of them would want anybody looking into their past. Maybe some of them have a bunch of liens on their home. Maybe some of them have been caught in bed with other men. Maybe there's other stories like that about some of these guys that are trying to hold Tim Kennedy accountable. I don't think they want stories about them being spread out there. I don't know anything. I don't care. Not my business. So you're going to tear this guy down. Veterans, tearing down other veterans. That's the other big complaint. That's what my buddy James was telling me. He's like, dude, how these guys freaking coming out there and tearing each other down? Like, dude, number one, they have a lot of time on their hands, right? Number two, all right, because most things are performative these days. Dude, Tim Kennedy is a huge name in the veteran community. And I don't know, if you don't follow these things, then you could give a shit. I don't follow these things. I didn't read his book. I don't really give a shit. Only reason why I'm really bringing this up is because a couple of my buddies have been like, dude, we'd love to hear your assessment on this. My assessment, I don't know, it's no better than anybody else's. Like I said, I know some guys that are really close to him, which they're good dudes, they're funny dudes. But, take them all with a grain of salt, man. Like, they're performers, they're entertainers. Some of them are movies now. Like, he's been in movies. I mean, it's all performative, I don't hate him. Even if he's telling whoppers, and he's outwardly lying. Dude, who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? No one's gonna care. No one's really gonna care. I wouldn't do that. And at the end of the day, dude, if you really think about this, at the end of the day, it's him that has to live with it, right? Like, if he's lying his ass off, it's him that has to live with this. It's him who has to be like, I think he's going to double down, which he did in his reply to this anti-hero podcast. But, he has to go to sleep with that, man. If everybody hates him, and which I don't think he'd give a shit, he gets kicked out of the Green Berets, I don't think he'd give a shit. These guys holding him accountable, I really don't think he gives a shit. And I think he believes everything that he said, dude, whether he's telling someone else's stories or not. I mean, I've told other people's stories, never as my own. However, I have told other stories that I heard, along at the campfire or along the way throughout my deployments and my military service as well. So, I don't know, man. I think this is all kind of all for nothing. Maybe, for clicks or clickbait or, maybe they're, I don't know, dude. I really don't. I'm not in their head, just like I'm not in Tim Kennedy's head. Would I say some of the things that he said? Absolutely not. Everything that I would ever say in a book or telling, war stories or what it may be, believe me, anything I've ever said or put out there, man, I can back up. I mean, it's in black and white on a metal narrative or battle damage assessment in a misrep or whatever, man. Every time I was in anything in combat, believe me, there's a report about it. There's a synopsis on it. There's detailed reports about how many airstrikes I called in, how many bombs were dropped, and the effects that they had on the battlefield. Like, I would have to document all this in every mission, in every airstrike, every troops in contact. What is my last Bronze Star said when I was involved in 120-something firefights. Okay, I don't know. It all blends together, man, really. But it says that in black and white, right? Confirmed by the military. So I'm not going to go around just telling, stories like, oh, I fucking, I was at 1,000 and, whatever. Most of the time, people don't care. I mean, unless there's a lesson to be learned from it. That's the only reason why I would ever say something. And I've told a lot of stories. I've told them on stage in front of bases, many people. I've shared my story a lot of times. But mine mainly has to do with transition, right? I had difficulty transitioning back from a life that was 100,000 miles an hour to cricket, but I made it through, man. I made it back. I kicked all the habits and I made it through all the VA programs that I had to go through. Started a couple of nonprofits, and life is good, man. Life is good. I'm home. I'm alive, and I'm happy. And I wish him the best, man. If it's all bullshit, hey, he's made a absolutely outstanding career of it. He's wealthy. I don't think these guys are going to have much effect on it. Even if it's proven, right, that he is lying, I really don't think it's going to hurt him. I think it's going to be all for nothing. And then what now? Who cares? Worry about what's going on in your own backyard. That's kind of my philosophy on life. But yeah, man, these guys are just characters, dude. They're funny. They're performers. And that's my assessment on my assessment and analysis, deep analysis and thought on Tim Kennedy Gate. So, hey, man, this is Jamie Medina with the Darkpod 2.4 and signing off. Have a good night.